Hey, I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to be talking through my favorite albums from 2024. I've had some time to sit with them, listen to a lot of music. I actually listened to over 120 albums from 2024 and finally feel like my rankings have stabilized a little bit. And so I'm here to talk about, I believe, 31 albums. I think that's 12 honorable mentions, and then I'll have my count down my ranked top 19 that made the cut for those top rankings. I would highly recommend you check out the playlist I have linked in the description below that has a sampling of music songs across all these albums that I'm talking about. It's a great way to find ones that you might enjoy, as well as I might be able to describe the music. Listening to it is a lot better, and it allows you to skip over the ones that maybe don't fit your tastes, and maybe you'll find something new that you really enjoy. If you love music, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I like talking about music with people and plan to post a lot more music related content. But let's just jump into this with some honorable mentions. Starting off with Fabiana. Oh man, Palladino or Palladino. I don't know how this is pronounced actually. Self-titled album here. And this is a very retro 80s sounding pop album. The sounds used here, kind of the synthy, and even just like the vocal delivery, it sounds very much like it does not sound like an album that came out in 2024, and not really a period of pop music that I particularly am drawn to as far as that kind of 80s aesthetic. But I actually found there's a few songs on here that are some, just, I don't know, some bangers. There's some catchy and groovy stuff on here that has kept me coming back to it a little bit. So enough so that it gets a recommendation from me. Next, we have a cool jazz fusion album. This is Fearless Movement from Kamasi, Washington. This was my introduction to Kamasi, Washington, who apparently, looking back at his discography, makes very long albums. A lot of these albums are pushing 2 hours. This one was about an hour and a half. And a lot of really cool stuff here. He kind of band leader and saxophonist. There's some pretty killer sax playing on this album. It's long, and it's a lot of this more instrumental driven jazz stuff is often hard to find a place in my regular listening rotation. But I definitely enjoyed this one. A few tracks, in particular, and if this is a genre you're interested in, I think it's definitely one worth checking out. Next up, we have a band that I feel like I'm going to be talking about in almost every one of these videos I post, and this is Flight B741 from King Gizzard and the Wizard, and that's because their output is just absurd. They're releasing an album every year. I think a couple years ago they released 4 albums in 1 year, and pretty much across the board of what I've listened to, I tend to enjoy their stuff. It's very jam band rocking, but they like to go off on tangents on different albums and kind of explore a different genre in different albums. This is one I think I enjoyed more than a lot of theirs. It's a little more bluesy rock feeling. It still kind of falls into this I guess music purgatory for me, where it's this music I like, but I rarely find myself coming back to it a lot or having it in my regular listening rotation. I don't know if that's some of the length of some of the songs, or just, I don't know, a lot of maybe the stuff across their discography kind of being a little bit similar. But it's a band I do enjoy. I'm glad I listened to this one. It's a fun one. I think the fun factor of this one is maybe even higher than a lot of them in their discography. Next up, we have Girl with No Face from Allie X. I was not familiar with Allie X, but listened to this very synth-driven pop album that maybe has kind of a darker edge to it. She's maybe got kind of this gothic approach to her vocals. And there's not a lot here that felt particularly innovative. In fact, in a few places, the synth is almost feels super cliche with it, just bouncing on these octaves, just these really punchy synths. But it's some catchy stuff. There's some really catchy stuff on this album, and some cool tracks. And I found myself coming back to it, and some of it has stayed in my listening rotation as well. So if you like kind of a synth pop feel, I think this is one that you should check out. Next up was a pleasant surprise. This is Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish. Now, I went into this pretty much entirely blind. I don't think I'd heard a single Billie Eilish song, despite, her being very, very popular. And I went in with not super high expectations because typically mainstream pop does not tend to land very well for me. And so I found this actually to be a bit of a surprise of like, oh, this was all right. The production was nice. The songwriting didn't feel super cliche. It had some cool builds. Just she has kind of a unique delivery that I didn't blow me away, but was working for me. So yeah, not one I think I'm going to come back to, but it certainly ended up being a better experience than I usually have with a lot of these mainstream pop albums. And I'll probably check out some of the rest of her discography just because I'm intrigued enough after listening to this album. Next, we have Lives Outgrown by Beth Gibbons. She's best known as the frontwoman of the band Portishead, who I have not listened to a whole lot. I've listened to Dummy is the one album, and I remember thinking it was good, not great for my taste. It was fine, but I hadn't really been coming back to it. And that album had it's kind of this very brooding, dark atmosphere with kind of this, I don't know if you would call it, trap, or I'm leaning into genre descriptors I'm not used to using, but trip hop or something like that. This brings, I feel like, a lot of the vibes of that album to a more acoustic guitar driven instrumental, and I actually thought that was very cool. There's a lot of very cool atmosphere on here, and hearing it through the lens of that instrumentation, I enjoyed it a lot. It maybe is a little bit repetitive or just kind of like sitting in the same sonic space for the album that I have found the more I've listened to it, the less I've felt like going back to it. There's a few tracks that I like, more than others, but very cool sound, and definitely one that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy a lot. Next, we have my introduction to the artist MJ Lenderman, and this is Manning Fireworks. Kind of, I guess, it's kind of this slacker rock country leaning singer-songwriter feel that's very just got a kind of a raw feel to it of just this guy singing his songs. And it doesn't sound like something that should normally grab me. The country leaning angle doesn't tend to be a positive for me. It usually isn't something that is albums I enjoy as much. But this one also had a lot of nice guitar work and just some catchy melodies and riffs. And I actually have found myself coming back to a number of the tracks on this album. So yeah, I could see it being a little polarizing. He's got kind of a unique style, unique vocal delivery, but definitely worth a look. I'm a little bummed he added like 6.5 minutes of ambient guitar droning at the end of the last track. But overall, I think this is a strong album in kind of this slacker country rock genre. Next, sometimes I just want something that's like groovy, funky, more focus on the instrumental and the catchiness of it. And I found that in Miniseries 2 by SUMIN and Slom. I actually don't know how you pronounce that. This is a Korean band, and it's these funky Korean pop tunes that definitely lean a little bit more into the bass and funk instrumentation. And while there's nothing like mind-blowing here, they're just some fun tracks, and I've enjoyed coming back to it or having it pop up in my rotation. It's catchy stuff. I don't know what they're singing about, but there's some groove here that speaks to me. So I definitely recommend it if you like that type of kind of funky pop tunes. Next, we have Peacemaker by Vera Sola. This is a nice singer-songwriter album that almost has this kind of like sultry or like cabaret edge, but with kind of like a Western Americana feel, I guess is how I would describe it. And I liked a lot of what was here. There's a few tracks. I think The Line was one in particular that kind of, stood out. But it definitely was enough to put this artist on my radar. I actually learned that she's the daughter of actor Dan Aykroyd, who I associate with Ghostbusters. Clearly she has dropped that, her, given name for her solo career, maybe doesn't want to keep that association up. But I thought this was a strong singer-songwriter album. Next, we have Sentir que no sabes by Mabe Frati. This one is surprising to make my list because this is definitely leaning, well, one, it's all in Spanish, so it's already kind of got the foreign barrier working against it a little bit. But it's also quite avant-garde, I would say. Like, I'm not usually drawn to more avant-garde stuff. Like, there's definitely a point where it just is beyond what I find enjoyable. But this, I think what kept me coming back to this was really the sparse instrumentation, really driven with a lot of like cool upright bass and like cello parts. It just had a really cool vibe to it, and there was just enough of the hooks of like being grounded and kind of like, you know, some melodic things outside of the more avant-garde leaning parts of it, that I found that a lot of it worked for me, and especially on like good headphones. There's some really cool sounds on this album. So you know, if you're feeling a little more exploratory in the music you want to check out, I definitely have enjoyed this one. Two more here. We got Shinbengumi by Ginger Root. This is my introduction to Ginger Root, and this falls in this category of just playful, fun, kind of electronic-driven bedroom pop that just is like really catchy, fun tunes and fun little noises in the instrumentation. You know, it's not one of those albums that's going to ascend my list. Like, the depth maybe isn't quite there, but it's just fun. It's fun to throw something like this on, and it's a good like Friday night album. A lot of nice, funky, catchy tracks on here. And last, for honorable mentions, we have Where We've Been, Where Do We Go From Here by Frico. I think that's maybe how you pronounce that. I should really look up these things before I film. This is kind of this indie rock. It's a very like earnest indie rock. I don't know. It's I'm trying to think of who I would maybe compare it to, but it's got a lot of good hooks, kind of these anthemic gang vocals of kind of coming in on these big choruses. And it's a debut album from this group, and I think it's very strong for a debut album. I definitely am going to keep my eye on kind of what they're up to from here. But yeah, there was a lot I liked on here, of kind of just a more straightforward kind of indie rock sound. With that, let's jump into my best albums of the year in ranked order. If you didn't know, those honorable mentions were just listed in alphabetical order. And this is going to be starting with number 19, Ill Times from Gum and Ambrose Kenny Smith. Now, you may or may not know that Ambrose Kenny Smith is actually the frontman, lead singer of the band King Gizzard and the Wizard. So if he didn't have his hands full enough putting out like an average of 2 albums a year with that group, he's also collaborating with other groups. And I think I listened to another album recently that was some other band that he's a part of. So the guy just basically writes music, records, and performs all the live long day. This is interesting because Gum, who he's collaborating with here, is a little bit more of like an electronic leaning pop sound. And so it is interesting to kind of hear those come together, these influences. And I think it actually works really well. There's a lot of catchy, upbeat things on here that kind of combine the synth and kind of the electric guitar into a nice, cohesive, rocking sound. And I actually found myself coming back to this more than I have a lot of the King Gizzard albums. And that's probably just because the songs are a little shorter, a little punchier, maybe a little more accessible to just show up in rotation. And so, yeah, a lot of nice hooks and grooves here, and a cool project and collaboration between these two. Next, we have What Now by Brittany Howard. Brittany Howard is formerly the lead singer of the band Alabama Shakes, and you know that was a band that her powerful vocals in a lot of ways made that band and what she brought to it. And now she's bringing that same asset to a very kind of different genre. I'd say her solo stuff is going more into this kind of like psychedelic feel with a lot more funk in it. And I tend to like a lot of kind of like funk psychedelia stuff. And so her powerful voice with that, there's some really cool ways that comes together here. You know, when she really lets go with her voice into the stratosphere and there's some of this crazy, you know, funky instrumentation going underneath it. I think it's pretty cool. So this one, I thought it was maybe going to be higher on this list. It's settled a little bit for me, but still a lot of stuff I really have enjoyed in this one. My next one is a completely out of left field, unexpected one, and this is No Hands by Joey Valance and Bray. This on paper seems like an album that I should not like at all. I'm not really a rap guy, and this is like comedy rap / like very like Gen Z, self-aware, almost self-deprecating. It's like they're in on the joke, right? And they're presenting themselves as these two white boys doing these songs. But let me tell you, there is some catchy production here, that I don't know. A lot of it was actually clicking for me just from a does this sound good perspective. Then you add in that like the self-aware kind of funny lyrics. A lot of it I actually found very humorous or catchy. And I don't know. I've kind of come back to it. It's very reminiscent of something like the Beastie Boys, which again is not a band that I really have enjoyed that much in the past. But something about this album with Joey Valance and Bray has stuck around for me, and there's some tracks I just really enjoy off of it. Your mileage may vary. Next up, I have Seed of a Seed by Haley Hendricks. Good luck spelling that last name based on how I just pronounced it. And this is a very folk singer-songwriter, kind of, vanilla album as far as what instrumentation is presented here. And with those types of albums, I mean, it's all hanging really on the songwriting for it to be an album that's going to land or stick around. And here I thought the songwriting was actually very good. There's a lot of just good songs here and kind of the lush but kind of comfortable sound. I don't know. It's kind of this relaxed approach to it, but enough creativity and hooks that it doesn't sound too samey throughout. So if you like kind of like the more guitar-driven folk singer-songwriter stuff, I would definitely check out Haley Hendricks. At 15, we have another kind of female singer-songwriter. This is Laura Marling with Patterns and Repeat. Actually, my introduction to Laura Marling. I had heard of her and knew some of her albums were high rated, but hadn't really gotten around to them. But with her new album coming out, I gave it a listen and really enjoyed this one. You can tell she is a very seasoned, strong songwriter. And this album in particular has very strong themes of her now being a parent and kind of just these parental themes, which, I found I was listening to this album early in the morning. I was working out. All my family was still asleep. And so my 4-year-old and 2-year-old are in the bedroom right next to me sleeping as I'm working out. And I'm hearing this song, Child of Mine by Laura Marling, that's very leaning into just like these thoughts about being a parent. And, it resonated with me as a fellow parent. So if you're a parent, maybe check out this album. But even if not, lots of good, strong songwriting here. She does a good job of painting kind of these nice landscapes with both the instrumentation and her lyrics. At 14, we have Long Arc by Mikko Joensuu. And this is a very slow, drawn out, lots of builds where a lot of these songs are staying on the same kind of chorus and repeating it with very slight variations in instrumentation. And a lot of times that kind of thing doesn't work well for me. It just ends up being a little too long. I don't find myself wanting to come back to it. This one's just walking that line to where some of these lush builds are just so powerful and just sound so good, especially with like good headphones, that I do find myself wanting to come back to them. I mean, a song like Mountain Man that really builds to this cathartic bridge outro and repeats it with this lush instrumentation. I mean, it just it sounds really good, and his vocal style really complements the instrumentation that he has around it. This might be one of the more underrated ones on my list. I think at the time that I last looked, it had like under 150 ratings on rateyourmusic.com. So definitely one to check out. It's definitely got kind of some more maybe Christian religious themes, which I do appreciate when an artist is able to do that without having to be too overtly. There is a spectrum of how overtly Christian feeling the music needs to be, while still like exploring some of those themes and lyrics and stuff. So definitely worth a look if you like kind of these lush builds. You'll know probably from the first track whether you're interested in listening to more. Next, number 13, we have Bright Future by Adrianne Lenker. She is the lead singer of the band Big Thief. And I guess I don't really know, but I get the vibe that she's kind of the creative powerhouse behind a lot of that. She's definitely shown to be a very strong songwriter, and I think this collection of songs is just more evidence of that. I enjoyed her other solo album that I think was just called Songs, something like that. Enjoyed that one. I think this one is very good too. The first song threw me off a little bit. It was a little bit too freeform for my tastes, and I wasn't really digging it. But then the rest of the album, and especially as I've listened to more, really solid tracks, just well written hooks in kind of this stripped back kind of folk singer-songwriter. Lots of good melodies and just effective instrumentation where the instrumentation is. So I think another strong outing for Adrianne. At number 12, we have something very different. Another band that I did not anticipate that this would be one that I'd be interested in exploring more of their discography. This is Invincible Shield by Judas Priest. This is a very classic metal band, and I actually got into them through listening to Painkiller, which is a very thrash metal. I mean, you'll know very quickly if this isn't for you, and I didn't think it was, but the more I listened to it, it just started to vibe with me more. And sometimes I don't always want it, but sometimes that kind of really driving kind of metal is, I don't know, it works for me. And I have to say, this album now, Invincible Shield, coming out 30 years after Painkiller, which already was like well into their career as a band. It's amazing. The Painkiller to this album, I mean, they definitely have kept up their chops, and I think it's a shockingly strong album for how long that they've been doing this. So yeah, I've been very surprised that I've enjoyed this much. It's good music to work to, I probably get more work done when I listen to music like this just because of the tempo and the driving riffs and drums. And so if you're into a little bit more heavier stuff, I found Invincible Shield to actually be a pretty good outing from a very late career Judas Priest. Number 11, we have Keeper of the Shepherd by Hannah Francis. This is another kind of more singer-songwriter folk album. This one rose up a little bit more. It has a few interesting characteristics to it. One, I think the vibe is very kind of like earthy is how I would describe it. I don't know. Like it might be because there's a lot of like down tuning of the acoustic guitar to where it's really getting these low. I don't know if it's, going down to D or even C that gives it just that more earthy feel. But then it also has some very interesting ways it plays with time signatures. From the very opening track, you find that there's kind of some interesting rhythms in the way that things are delivered. But also just some cool atmospheres that are built through here with the harmonies. I mean, there's a song like Husk that's one of the more laid back one, but when it comes in with the big harmonies and the chorus, it's really nice and really just powerful. And so this one I actually thought it was going to be lower when I was putting together my list, but I gave it another listen with my good headphones, and I think that pushed it up. I think that really emphasizes just, kind of the soundscapes that she's creating here. I know she has another album that's going to be coming out here shortly. I think I saw a single for it, so I'm looking forward to checking that out as well. Let's go into the top 10, and actually my number 10 might be the most unknown or a hidden gem on the list, though I will say that this is, I think, going to be one that's pretty polarizing whether you enjoy this or not. This is Cacophony by Gumshoes. And as far as I know, Gumshoes is just like one guy, I think in the UK or somewhere Europe, that's just making these albums completely on his own, self-produced, and it's a very kind of like piano pop, very catchy, very sugary, I guess, in its presentation. very distinctive vocals, and that may be like the determining factor for a lot of people of whether they like this or not. And it almost borderlines on kind of like a musical theater feel. Like it is leaning more in that direction. But my gosh, are there some just catchy earworms on some of the stuff that Gumshoes has put out. And Cacophony is my favorite that I've listened to. And yeah, I mean, these things get stuck in your head, and a lot of these songs, they'll, I think at the end of the title track, Cacophony kind of goes into this repeated outro that, it's just repeating it and building different ways, but it's so catchy that like, it's that difference between like wanting the repetitiveness to stop and wanting it to keep going. Like sometimes the hook is just so good that you're just enjoying it. You just want to keep going, right? Because it's just grabbing you. And I feel like he finds a lot of those on this album. So yeah, kind of a surprise. It was one that I actually discovered early in the year. He seems to like to drop his albums like the first week of the year. And so I listened to this pretty early on and went exploring 2024 albums. Big surprise. I've explored a lot of his other albums as well, which are good. Actually, his newer album. Sorry, I cut there to go check because I had this moment of, wait a second, is Cacophony actually from 2023? Did I put this in the wrong year? But again, it's what's confusing me is that he drops it so early in the year. He dropped it right at the beginning of 2024 that it made me think that maybe his newer album was from this year. But his newer album is actually 2025, Bugs Forever. I think that's the title of it and not one of the songs on it, is one that I've actually enjoyed a lot as well. So sorry for the cut there. I had a moment of, did I put this on the wrong list? But Cacophony, rightly on the 2024 list and comes in at my number 10. Next, we have Only God Was Above Us by Vampire Weekend. Now, Vampire Weekend is a band I've listened to a lot and really enjoyed. They've maybe gone down a little bit in my personal, maybe how I would rank my favorite bands, but still a band I really, really enjoy. Their album, Modern Vampires of the City, still is comfortably my favorite by them. I think that is their strongest project. But this one is very good. And I think after Father of the Bride was a little bit of a dip, it was a little bit of a different feel. It felt like an album that had a lot of fluff, I guess. There were some strong tracks, but had a lot of fluff around it. Only God Was Above Us feels like a strong return to form, but kind of like a new era of Vampire Weekend. Like, whereas their first three albums all sound like very in the same wheelhouse of what they're doing. And I guess Modern Vampires of the City feels like kind of like the mature final form of that early sound. Only God Was Above Us kind of feels like a new, kind of bringing a new sound to them. And they are, only 75% of the band that they were, with Rostam leaving the band back after their third album. But yeah, lots of fresh arrangements and instrumentation here. It leans a little bit actually more to like a noise rock at times, like just a little bit more chaos and noise with some of the instrumentation, which actually for me is a little bit of a downside. Like I enjoy some of it, but sometimes it's not as much my taste. And especially with a band like Vampire Weekend, I think I like a lot of times when they are coming with a lot cleaner mix. But still a strong album, one that I enjoy and I think is in the mix somewhere down there for my second favorite Vampire Weekend album. I don't know which one would make the cut. The closer here, is it Hope? I think is a little like long and repetitive for my taste. Like it's all right, but it didn't feel like it needed to be the longest Vampire Weekend song that's been recorded up to this point. But even with some of those chinks in the armor, really strong and fun album. And I actually got to see them perform it live, which was fun. Next at number 8, I have Eye to the Ear by Cosmo Sheldrake. This is my introduction to Cosmo Sheldrake, and man, is he bringing a unique sound with what he's presenting here. I don't even know what I would describe it in terms of genre. He's clearly drawing a lot of orchestration, and even like field recordings. Like he's bringing in a lot of just interesting noises, and even just like the way the vocal harmonies and everything contributed. He's really building these interesting soundscapes. But there's some good groove to it too, and hooks with this just little touch of like weirdness and quirkiness to how he's presenting it and presenting the lyrics. But it actually, my first listen of it, it's not a short album. It felt a little samey on a first listen. The more I've listened to it, the more songs have kind of distinguished themselves. And I really like a lot of what's here. I went back and actually listened to his previous album that I'm not going to remember the name of, that has a bunch of fish on the front. That one is quite strong too. I think if you like this, you're probably going to like that as well. I think this one's not going to be a broadly appealing album. I think there's a good chance that a lot of people are going to listen to this and it's not really going to be for them. But I've kind of liked it. And definitely we'll keep an eye on what Cosmo's doing here from now on. Next, we talked about with Joey Valance and Bray how like the kind of comedy leaning can be very kind of hit or miss. This is another band that manages to kind of hit despite being leaning in that direction. This is It's Sorted by Cheekface. This was my first album I listened to by Cheekface. I've since listened to a lot of Cheekface. It's humorous geek rock. It reminds me a little bit of like a combination between the Talking Heads, Cake, and like maybe a touch of Weird Al Yankovic, but kind of through more of this lens of power pop rock. But it's got a lot of catchy hooks. It's got funny lines. It's this very, I don't know if I would say Gen Z or just very modern. There's a lot of modern references and a lot of the lyrics and just quirky little satirical touches to it that are funny. Man, the combination of the quirkiness of the lyrics and the hooks, the catchiness of the hooks does mean these are things that get stuck in your head. You know, I find myself just pulling out random Cheekface lines, which is something that actually is true of Talking Heads. There's a lot of like random Talking Heads lyrics that I'll just like say at random times just because they're funny. And so, yeah, I was surprised by this one. It's just nothing outstays its welcome here. Fun tracks, and it sounds good. They really do a good job with kind of the way that they're bringing this kind of rock. It isn't just the funny pieces of it that like it genuinely sounds good. Next up, number 6, we have Mahashmashana by Father John Misty. And this is an album that has slowly moved up. I guess maybe not even that slowly, because I listened to this a little later in the year. And when I was going to do this list even, this was quite a bit down, but some recent listens of it have moved it up my list. This is my first Father John Misty album. I've since started going back through his discography. But you open with this just epic title track, very lush orchestral, epic long track. And very cool, especially with good headphones. I mean, there's just some really nice builds in this track. And then it goes into the second track, which is a little bit more of this straightforward rocker with She Cleans Up that has this like just a locomotive of vocals just driving forward with these kind of punchy vocal lines. And yeah, like the more I've listened to the album all the way through, I'm like, man, the tracks are really all solid. And he's got kind of his voice paired with kind of his lyric style is just this unique flavor that I can see why a lot of people really like a lot of his work, because I think he kind of has a unique character with just his delivery and lyrics. But this one has really grown on me. I mean, could this even go up further in the future? I don't know, but it has been an excellent introduction to Father John Misty, and I actually have found some of the stuff. I think the other album I've listened to, God's Favorite Customer, I liked quite a bit. There was whatever one is between that was all right, but not as good. So I'm working my way back through, but enjoying what I've listened to of Father John Misty. Next, number 5, we have Submarined by the Marias. Very cool vibes on this album. It's kind of this soft pop, but very like kind of funky, and with the female kind of ethereal vocals, but just a lot of really catchy grooves, really well crafted little pop songs that still have some cool stuff with kind of the funk and synth. And it does actually, the cover is like, I think it's the lead singer like falling into water or whatever, like in water. But it kind of has an underwater vibe. Like a lot of the songs on this, it's like it almost has, I don't know what it is that's exactly creating that feel of being a little bit more underwater. But it is cool. And this one has seen a lot spins since I first heard it, just because it's one that's easy to, if it comes up in shuffle, to want to listen to it. It's one that my wife has enjoyed as well. Actually saw that they opened for Billie Eilish for at least some stretch of Billie Eilish's tour. I can definitely see the fit there. Like I think that definitely works. But from my preferences, I definitely prefer Submarine by the Marias, and looking forward to more music from them. Number 4, we have Empathogen by WILLOW. And this is a big surprise. First of all, it was one of the last ones on my list that I was going through to kind of check off everything I wanted to listen to for 2024. And usually when I'm getting to the bottom of my list, like it's ones that I've maybe like keep waiting to do. And a lot of times it's ones that don't end up, landing very well for me. But this one was very surprising. It's very great, groovy, kind of more progressive pop with very like jazz leaning in its chords and some interesting, maybe time signature changes that you wouldn't expect from like a pop song. The structure of the album is a little weird in that it's got some kind of like weird little instrumentals that are very kind of short, but the more I've listened to it, the more they work for me, and the more I would rather have a funky little catchy short instrumental than something that feels like it's outstaying its welcome. The huge surprise is amplified by the fact that this is the daughter of Will Smith. This is WILLOW Smith, who, her music career goes back to, basically being a child and probably cringing at some of the music that she was a part of back then. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like she's really finding herself as an artist, and this kind of jazz, pop, funk, I don't know. I'm here for it. So, really have enjoyed this one, actually. I hope her previous albums are really like exploring a lot of genres. Like, I hope she kind of sticks with this sound, or like at least close to it, because I really, I'm digging it. Bringing me to my number 3, which is No Name by Jack White. I had not listened to much Jack White, other than knowing some of his biggest hits as part of the White Stripes, but really enjoyed this one. Like, it's very stripped back, garage rock, straightforward with kind of the riffs, and he's got his unique vocal delivery and style that brings a lot of character to this music. But I think this album just has some of his strongest hooks and songs that are kind of just more in that straightforward rocking lane. Like some of his albums before this that I've kind of gone back to since are a little bit more experimental at times. I mean, he's really just sticking to his bread and butter, but just doing it really well, to the point that I think this is comfortably my favorite project that he's done, even including stuff by the White Stripes. So yeah, if you want something that just rocks in a catchy way, and if you like, Jack White's quirkiness, I think you'll like No Name a lot. Number 2, we have A Dream Is All We Know by the Lemon Twigs. The Lemon Twigs have been a huge discovery for me in recent years. I first was introduced to them through their album Everything Harmony. Have really turned into one of my favorite bands. I enjoy that retro Beatles, Beach Boys. I like a lot of that music. And I feel like Lemon Twigs are the band that are doing that style, like very clearly heavily inspired by that era of music, but doing it so well in a modern context and bringing music that's finding its own identity and, is totally worth listening to. It doesn't leave you with that feeling of just like, well, why wouldn't I go back and listen to those old bands? Which maybe for some people it does. For me, it does not. I really love a lot of what they're doing here. Was interesting to see how they were going to follow up Everything Harmony, because that was an album I enjoyed quite a bit. And I think I might like A Dream Is All We Know even more. I think it leans even more into kind of the sunshine Baroque pop feel of some of that era. But lots of just well-crafted, catchy, upbeat. I mean, it's a happy album to listen to. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I definitely feel like this is an underexplored thing of kind of leaning more into those influences. Maybe I just haven't found the right bands. And I don't think Lemon Twigs is all that popular at this point. I actually got to see them live, which was very fun because it was in a super small venue. I mean, we were right in front and it was a great concert. If you get a chance to see them live, they are really, really strong live. And so, yeah, the Lemon Twigs, I mean, they've been one of my most listened to artists in the last couple years. These two most recent albums are definitely my favorites, though I do enjoy some of their older stuff as well. But it's a little bit of how I feel with Willow, where I'm kind of hoping they stay in this lane they've been in because I'm really liking the music that they're putting out right now. But despite loving that album, my number one is comfortably ahead. It was a clear, not clear from the first time I listened to it, but clear at this point that this is my number one of 2024, and this is Imaginal Disc by Magdalena Bay. I had listened to a little bit of their previous album, Mercurial World, and I had bookmarked it and I was going to come back to it at some point. Then I saw Imaginal Disc come out. I saw that it seemed to be getting some pretty good reception, and so I gave it a listen, and my first listen was like good. It didn't. Well, I wouldn't say it didn't blow me away, but it wasn't like a negative experience. So I was like, oh, that was nice. I definitely clearly went into my rotation. But man, with repeated listens, has this just gone up and up and up and up, and that tends to be a trait of some of my favorite albums of all time. Like most of my favorite albums of all time were not love at first sight. It was like at first sight. And then over time, they just ascend to this level of your just favorites of any music I've listened to. And that's where Imaginal Disc is finding itself now. It is in my top tier. It is an album that the individual songs, so many, I mean, it pretty much doesn't have a miss for me. I mean, there's some of the things that are a little more interlude-y that maybe don't stand out as much in isolation, but just so many hit tracks across this whole thing. But then you put it all together and it's even better as an album because of how the album is constructed to flow so well all the way through it, the pacing of it. It's such a good album listening to from start to finish. This genre that they kind of have uncovered from themselves of very kind of electronic, catchy synth pop. But now with Imaginal Disc, it's definitely pushing it more into some more creative territories with how it explores these conventional pop songs. I mean, how I kind of see it. So I've actually gone back and listened to, so Matt and Mika from Magdalena Bay used to, way back, I think when they were like high school, used to actually be in a progressive rock band. Like think something more like, I know Matt's a big fan of Yes. I mean, it's like more in that lane, and that's the type of music they were writing and playing. I think if you look up Tabula Rasa, I think, is on Spotify, their album Crimson. That's, Magdalena Bay back in the day doing that music, and that very, very different. But I can so see this like starting Magdalena Bay and a lot of their early Magdalena Bay EPs and stuff, it feels like they're trying to just like craft these little viral pop hits, and are kind of exploring that kind of realm. And then I think with the reception of Mercurial World, and they got kind of a little bit more well-known, and Mercurial World already was like, I don't know if you'd call it a concept album, but it was very like cohesive it was very much written as an album, not just a collection of songs. I feel like Imaginal Disc, we are seeing those progressive rock roots come back more, and them not being afraid to let those influences come through more in their songwriting, but now using the toolbox that they've built over the last, however many years practicing with all of these kind of synth pop tunes. And I tell you, the result with these two things together, I mean, it is just hitting for me. And has me excited for what they're going to do next, because I hope that just the reception of this album just encourages them to continue down that kind of creative path of their songwriting. But still, so many of the things that I do like about the pop side of things, of these hooks and really just like, synth sounds or instrumentation that is simple but just sounds so good. So yeah, this one has just grown into an absolute favorite of mine. And yeah, I mean, killer discography from Magdalena Bay. Mercurial World I like quite a bit, but it's a pretty big jump for me from that to Imaginal Disc. So yeah, very excited to see what Magdalena Bay does next.